That night, I stopped being the black man she could walk over and became the black man who walked away.
I always thought my marriage was steady, even if it wasn't perfect. My wife, Angela, had a sharp temper, but I'd learned how to navigate it over the years. She complained often and rarely offered a word of praise, but I did my best to keep the peace. I figured that's what marriage was, sometimes compromise. But then came the party that changed everything. We were at a friend's house, and her male best friend, Brad, was there. He started making jokes at my expense. At first it was lighthearted, but then his words turned sharp, mocking me, calling me weak right in front of everyone. I looked over at Angela, expecting her to step in to defend me. Instead, she just stood there with a small smirk on her face, like she was amused by it all. I laughed it off to avoid a scene, but something inside me cracked. In that moment, I felt her respect for me slipping away, and it was a chilling realization. From that night on, I started noticing things more clearly. Brad seemed to take every opportunity to put me down, and Angela never stopped him. Whenever I brought it up later, she'd just brush it off. "You're being too sensitive," she'd say. "You're just insecure." But it wasn't insecurity. It was a growing feeling of being an outsider in my own marriage. The distance between us grew wider each day. I could sense something was hidden behind her sarcastic remarks and her increasing coldness. I tried to have serious conversations to ask her what was wrong, but she dodged every single attempt. One afternoon, I came home early and overheard her whispering on the phone. Her tone was different, warm, intimate, and far too familiar. The second I walked into the room, she hung up, her face flushing. She lied, telling me it was her sister, but her nervous energy told a different story. Later that evening, her phone lit up with a notification, and I saw his name plain as day, Brad. The signs were all there, screaming at me, but a part of me refused to accept them. I started to feel like I was shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller in my own home. Soon Angela started working late more often. Her attitude toward me shifted from coldness to outright contempt. She criticized everything: my job, my hobbies, even my friends. I eventually stopped trying to please her because it was clear that nothing I did would ever be good enough. The breaking point came one weekend. She was outside on the phone having a loud, angry conversation, not realizing I was just inside the open window. I heard her praising Brad, talking about how he was so strong and ambitious, and then she started complaining about me, about how I was holding her back. My heart didn't just break, it shattered. But through the pain, a cold, sharp anger began to form. I realized she saw me as weak, as someone who would never fight back, who would just take whatever she dished out. She had completely underestimated me. That was her biggest mistake. From that day forward, I stopped being the passive husband. I started digging. It didn't take long to find the messages between them. It wasn't just flirting. They were making plans for a future together, a future without me. Brad had even suggested she start preparing to push me out of the picture financially. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, harder than I ever could have imagined. But I didn't let my emotions take over. I stayed calm. I became methodical. Quietly, I began gathering evidence. I screenshotted every message, saved every call log, and documented every lie. I kept a detailed record of everything. I knew confronting her without a plan would be a disaster. I wanted a clean exit, and for that I needed to be prepared. Angela continued on, blissfully unaware, acting distant but so sure of herself, believing she held all the cards. She had no idea her entire scheme was about to come crashing down. My next step was to meet with a lawyer. I laid out everything I had found, and he told me exactly what I needed to do to protect myself and my assets. I started quietly separating our finances and emotionally withdrawing completely. She barely even noticed. Her world revolved around Brad and their secret plan, leaving her blind to what was happening right in front of her. The day of the confrontation finally arrived. When I sat her down, she immediately went on the defensive, trying to twist the narrative. She called me paranoid and controlling. She claimed I lacked passion and that Brad understood her in ways I never could. I let her talk. I let her spin her web of lies. I didn't raise my voice. I just sat there listening patiently. When she was finally done, I didn't argue. I simply laid the evidence out on the table in front of her, the printed messages, the records, everything. The color drained from her face. Her confident, arrogant demeanor evaporated in an instant. She tried to switch tactics, turning on the charm, trying to manipulate me with tearful excuses and apologies. But it was too late. Her words were hollow. "It's over, Angela," I said calmly. The marriage was done. She tried to bargain, to promise she'd change, but I was already gone. I moved out that same night, leaving her to deal with the wreckage she had created. Of course, the drama didn't end there. Her best friend Monica started spreading rumors, trying to paint me as the villain to protect Angela's reputation. But the truth has a way of coming out, especially when it's backed by undeniable proof. One by one, our mutual friends learned what had really happened. As for Brad, his charm wore off pretty quickly once real-world consequences showed up at his door. He soon realized that Angela brought a lot more chaos than excitement, and their perfect relationship crumbled under the pressure of reality. Months later, after her life had completely fallen apart, Angela started reaching out. The texts and voicemails were filled with apologies, regrets, and pleas to talk. She said she'd made a huge mistake, that she was confused. But I knew what she really wanted. She wanted the stability she had thrown away. She wanted a safety net to catch her now that she was in freefall. I wasn't going to be that person ever again. I never responded. Instead, I focused on myself. I reconnected with friends and family who genuinely cared about me. I went back to the gym, finding strength not just in my body, but in my mind. Slowly but surely, my confidence returned. My home was quiet now, but it was a healing, peaceful quiet. Angela's messages continued for a while, but eventually they faded away, just like she faded from my thoughts. I don't hate her, I don't love her, I feel nothing but indifference. I learned to let go without bitterness, accepting that some endings are not just about loss, but about protection. I realized just how much energy I had wasted trying to hold together something that was already broken. And in the silence, I found a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. My life became steady, simple, and honest again. For the first time in a very long time, I chose myself. And it was the best decision I ever made. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, know that you're not alone and that there is a path forward. Make sure to follow for more stories like this.